Now let's discuss some of the business and legal considerations of a health coach. To date, there is no state or national licensing requirement to practice as a health coach. However, the following best practices should be followed. First and foremost, we need to make sure that we are adhering to the defined scope of practice and code of ethics for ACE certified health coaches. And I referred to this before, but that's in the back of your book and it's Appendix A. Secondly, if you take this on as a full-time thing, particularly if you are in private practice, so working for yourself, it's important that you meet with an attorney when establishing the business and maintain that relationship throughout. Now, one thing I want to make sure is that if you end up doing this independently, a lot of times different states will have some really great resources online that are free, particularly for small businesses. So make sure you take advantage of those and utilize those services as best as you can. Now let's discuss liability and negligence, your favorite word, right? We've heard this before. So remember, hiring that lawyer who is particularly familiar with laws and regulations within the health and fitness industry is incredibly important. So being familiar with the legal definition of advice versus supporting a client or offering expertise and education. So within your documents that you write, even including your contract that you have with your client, it's helpful to have a lawyer because they can tell you those things, right? So example, words like counseling and treatment and diagnosis should never be included in any of your documents because those are actually language that requires a mandated license for you to have, which you obviously don't. Well, maybe you one day will have those licenses, but right now you don't have those licenses, right? So here's an example of a statement that actually is a good statement to include in some of that work. I am here to assist my client by supporting them as they work towards achieving their personal health and wellness goals. So it's important, like we said, to consult with an attorney to obtain professional liability insurance. Now, you've probably heard of this through other classes before. As a health coach, the same rules apply. You need to make sure that you are covered. Now, if you work for a third-party site, so if you were in a clinical setting or a workplace wellness setting, there's a good chance that you don't need this additional professional liability insurance because they probably have that for you. However, that's not just assumption that should be made. You should make sure that that exists, okay? So make sure you have that conversation with them. If you're working in a private setting, you will need to cover this yourself and pay for this yourself, right? So additional insurance considerations include the following. Umbrella liability insurance. This can be useful when utilized with professional liability insurance as it provides more coverage if the health coach cannot cover all expenses associated with a lawsuit. So to be clear, umbrella liability insurance is in addition to professional liability insurance. If you have a lot of money put into your business, if you're bringing in a lot of money, if this is your sole thing and you have tons of clients, this might be something that's more of interest to you. Product liability insurance is utilized when health coaches sell products. Okay, so again, that's important. May or may not be something that you do, particularly in the beginning. Keyman insurance is utilized when coaches want to enter partnerships or corporations. So again, this doesn't happen until you work with large companies and you enter into those partnerships or those corporations. Now, in general, their general recommendation for health and wellness professionals is to possess a minimum of $1 million in general liability insurance. I will say that again. It is generally recommended that as a health and wellness coach, you have a minimum of $1 million in general liability insurance. Now, there are, whoever you're certified through, you typically can get a discounted rate. So if you click on that hyperlink that says discounted rates, that will bring you to ACE's discounted rates. But if you're certified for maybe another certification, say your personal training certification or group fitness, right, you can also go through them to get this general liability insurance. So shop around a little bit because every single organization might have different prices for this insurance. So now let's talk about the term negligence, right? There's kind of three main types. There's gross negligence. This is complete recklessness and disregard for safety of others. Okay, so this is one of those things that it's pretty obvious when it happens and hopefully none of you do. Okay, so gross negligence. Contributory negligence is when a client contributes to their own injury and a client cannot recover any money for that injury. Comparative negligence is when the responsibility of the injury is shared between the health coach and the client. So it's important to know that negligence, we use that term a lot, but there's three primary types of negligence. gross negligence, contributory negligence, and comparative negligence. Important that you know those three. So the following elements are necessary to create a binding contract and should be considered as part of the coaching agreement. And remember, in one of the beginning labs, I had you create a sample coaching agreement by looking at one of the ones that is used in the book. So things to include for this: an offer and an acceptance with a mutual agreement of terms, consideration of values that are exchanged, money, services, etc., some legality, so there's some legal terminology that's included in there, and then the ability of the parties to enter into a contract with respect to legal age and mental capacity. Okay, so when we're thinking about waivers and forms and contracts, these are all things that are on our brain. So it's important that health coaches understand the use of agreements to participate, informed consent, and waivers. These forms should be printed and signed by clients during the first coaching session. Now, if you coach all online, you can actually do this virtually as well via electronic signature. So those are all things to remember. We are luckily enough with our day and age of technology that not all of this needs to be printed, but again, if you're doing this in person, that might be a nice option for people. So agreement to participate is one of the forms, and this is designed to protect the health coach from a client claiming to be unaware of the potential risks or harm that is associated with lifestyle behavior change. Okay, so agreement to participate, to be clear, is one form, and it should detail the following things: the nature of the activity, so what are you doing with your client, the potential risks to be encountered, and the expected behaviors of the participant. What will the participant be doing? Informed consent is a second document, and this demonstrates that a client acknowledges that they have been specifically informed about the risks associated with the activities in which they are about to engage. Okay, so to be clear, the agreement to participate outlines all those risks, what the client will be doing. The informed consent is a signature-based thing that says, yep, I see that, and I acknowledge that these are risks associated with this activity. Okay, it is intended to communicate the potential benefits and dangers of the program or assessments procedures to the client. Now, what's nice and what's probably more commonly used in our field is a waiver, because a waiver actually includes all elements of the informed consent as well as all elements of the agreement to participate. So one of the reasons why waivers are the number one go-to in the health and fitness industry is because it includes both of those things. So to be clear, a waiver includes an informed consent as well as an agreement to participate. It should be signed as a component of the initial contract. So this needs to include a properly worded exculpatory clause to bar the injured party from potential recovery. So that's one piece. It also needs to, the waivers, it's important to know that waivers do not protect the health coach from injuries directly caused by gross negligence. So remember what gross negligence is. It's complete, like basically it's if you were as a health coach completely ignored anything. So if you're working in person and someone starts having a heart attack, you just walk away out of the room, right? Obviously, hopefully you're not going to do that, but that is gross negligence. A, you're CPR and AED certified. B, you just completely ignored the person and didn't help them, okay? So that would be an example of gross negligence. It's important to know that waivers can be incredibly helpful in the legal process. However, they do not stop someone from suing you. They can always sue you. Particularly, waivers do not protect a health coach from injuries related to that gross negligence. It can help with the other types of negligence, but not gross negligence. So important that we know that. Let's pause here and do a quick learning recap. First thing is, what are the three types of negligence? Important that we know those three. Then the second question is, I want you to understand the different documents that a health coach should have their clients fill out, and what are the different purposes for them. I'll pause here and I'll see you all for the next lecture.